This video will show you how to use Python to pull data from some API and save it in a SQLite database, that is to say a file, and we'll show you how to look at this file with something called DB browser for SQLite. All of these are free tools, and this will of course work on Mac, Linux, or Windows. So this will also be helpful if you haven't ever set up a Python virtual environment. I'll show you how to do that. Without further ado, let's get going. What we're going to do first is set up a Python virtual environment. This is kind of like node modules for a node site. It keeps all of your dependencies in one place, basically. So let's go to our projects folder, wherever it is for you, and I'm here on Windows, so I'm going to open Hyper, which is a terminal that I can recommend. Inside of it is git bash, so you have the feeling that you're on some kind of Linux system. What we want to do, let me get my other notes here, is create a directory. Name it anything you want. Let's say, oops, I have to change my keyboard here. Make a directory something like that has to do with the topic. So once you have that, you want to go into it, of course, or even the better way is to get into Visual Studio Code with code and then the name of the directory, and that will open Visual Studio Code and put you in that directory. When I do control backtick, it opens a terminal for me. And what we're going to do here then is create a virtual environment, which is basically just an env directory, and otherwise you're just in a directory. You just have to do it a couple times and it becomes clear. It becomes like node modules, as I said. Python -m for module, virtual environment, and then call the virtual environment directory env. You can call it anything you want, but env is standard. So it will install everything that you need, including pip. Pip is like Python packaging something. It's basically npm for Python, and here we see we have an env file. You can look into it and see what you have. Important is in scripts, and in scripts we see that we have a activate command, which we are going to run. Yeah, you have to activate this. We aren't in the virtual environment yet. We have to activate it with source, and then this script or activate file that we just saw, activate lam, executes it, and then when you see this env in parentheses, then you know that you are in your virtual environment. So take a look at all of your dependencies that you have in this virtual environment. The only dependency that you have now is pip, which will install dependencies. So that should get us started, and now we need to install a package that will help us fetch data from APIs on the internet, and that is called requests. So type pip install requests, and not unlike npm, we now have it in our list of dependencies. If we say pip list, we see that we have indeed not only requests, but everything that request depends on as well. So now that we know how to get into a virtual directory, let's learn how to get out of it. Simply type deactivate, and you see now that we do not have this env in parentheses anymore, which means that we are not in the virtual directory, so or environment. So if we type pip list, we see that pip is not even found because it is not installed globally on my computer. Probably recommended, so that every time you work with Python, you work inside a virtual environment where everything is installed. All of the dependencies are installed for that project only. Well, let's get back into our virtual environment. How did we do that? With source scripts, source env scripts, and activate, and bam, and there we are inside our environment. If we type pip list, what will we see? What do you think? That's right, everything that requests needs and requests itself. So there we have it, a Python virtual environment. Actually easy once you've done it once or twice, as I said, like npm in Node. So let's make a hello world in Python. I will create, oh, sorry for the whistle, create a file here called main py, and we will now print hello world. And how do we execute that? Instead of typing node and the name of the JavaScript file, we type Python and the name of the Python file, and it says indeed hello world. So let's change this to hello world and run it again, and it says hello world. There we go. Now we want to fetch something from the internet. Let's go find something to fetch. I have from my teaching days a list of here edwardtangway.vercel.app share realistic API data. Always interesting. One is a array of skills which comes from job applications or job ads, and I think there's over 200 skills that one should know if one wants to get a job as a developer. So a useful list, shall we say. I copied it, and let's go back and let's get rid of hello world. We don't need that. Maybe interjecting here to create a Git repository, also a good idea if you're making projects. Even if you keep them local, it's a good idea so that you can revert back to previous states of your application. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm thinking of the command git git init -b and call it dev for develop. That creates a repository, and the branch is dev. Here we are. And so as soon as you do that, you see that you have 1,000 files to check in. They're all in M somewhere. This is the same as Node modules, so you basically have to do the same thing that you do in a Node project, and that is make a git ignore and give it the env directory to ignore. And now indeed we only have 2 files, one being our main and the other being the git ignore. So let's go ahead and check that in, I would say. Initial commit and publish that branch, publish it publicly. Always a good idea, I guess. If your computer crashes, well then you have a nice little copy on the web. It's a nice way to develop. It wasn't always like this, maybe 20 years ago. So enjoy. So now we have a clean main py. Let me just do a sanity test here. Yes, we are recording. Okay, let me get back here 1 second. And yes, what do we need to do? Import requests. We already have installed it, so import requests, also similar to Node. Then we have our URL equals, I just love the Python syntax, as simple as can be. We need a response, which is similar to fetch in JavaScript. Response equals request.get URL. Wonderfully minimal here. If our response is 200, etc. Let's do that. If response status code equals 2 equals, not 3, 200, then, and Python has the indenting going on here, response JSON, so very similar to fetch. Now we're going to display the first 5, let's say, for item in data, and then the first 5. Because there's over 200, let's just display the first 5, or let's say the first 10, it doesn't matter. Yeah, there we go. Print the item. That's it. So, otherwise, if it wasn't a 200 response, some kind of problem, then print some kind of error. Failed to fetch data, and then we want to print a variable inside here, so we need our little f. Not sure what f stands for. What does f stand for? Response. But here, like the string literals in JavaScript, you can just add variables inside brackets without the $, status code. There we have it. So it'll print out the status code. And we're missing a little colon there. Yeah, well, that should actually work. Let's try it. So Python main, and what do we have? We have the first 5 that are coming from this file: Angular, CI/CD, React, Swagger, REST, in no particular order. Hello? So 10. Oh yeah, I only read 5, but we can read the first 5. So Angular, CI/CD, React, Swagger, REST. There we go. It got them pretty easy. Alright, well, that's certainly something to push, so let's push it. Fetching data is our commit message. Super. That's already online. Next step will be save the data from the API into the SQLite database. So an SQLite database is simply a file. We need something. We're going to use a library called SQLAlchemy. install it just like anything else. Install SQLAlchemy. This is like, what is it, Prisma? Yeah. An object relational mapper, basically. It allows you to just save objects into a database. So, yeah, we have a couple import lines. Let me just copy them here, and we'll talk about them. So we have requests. Now we have to make sure that all of the indentation is correct in Python. That's important. So SQLAlchemy, create engine, column, all kinds of stuff. This is just what you need. So yeah, this is a lot of boilerplate basically to get the SQLAlchemy and SQLite going. So we have an engine, create engine, and you have to have some kind of identifier for the SQLite file. We're just going to put it in the root, and we're going to call it db SQLite, like that. That's our engine. What are we going to do with this engine? Leave it for now. We're going to create something else called base, declarative base. All right. Then we have our URL. Okay. So this sets everything up. Then we're going to get our data, but we also need to create a kind of schema in this SQLAlchemy ORM, and that's going to be a class, a Python class. Let's call it skill, because that's what these things are, skills. So uppercase S skill, and here's where we have the base item, let's say. Then we need a table name, and these underscores are also something in Python, kind of magic symbols. Look it up. But it's a Python thing, and now we want each of the fields. So ID is going to be column. Okay, now we're using these commands that we have imported. It's an integer, also imported, and it's going to be the primary key. So this is something that you need if you are using SQLAlchemy. You need to have an ID. These don't have IDs. I'm adding an ID to each one. That's so that you can access them based on the ID. I do, however, have an ID code. This is a column, which is a string. Okay, then I just have string, 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 so I'm just going to copy this with a little Vim magic here and say this will be the name. Then we have the URL, and we have a description. And that is basically our schema ready to go. So yeah, we have our schema, we have our URL, we have our response, yeah, that comes from the API. And then what we want to do is to save this thing to SQLite. So yeah, let's do it before we actually get the response. We have to start, we have to open things up here. So base, okay, metadata, Again, this is a lot of boilerplate. Create, not create engine, but create all of the engine there. Yeah, and let's see. We have session, more boilerplate here. Session maker, got it. And bind the engine, got it. All necessary. Session variable is of type session. So after we have that set up, we go get the response. Yes. The data is gotten. Yes. Now this data, instead of printing it, we want to write it to SQLite, and not just the first 10, but all of them. Very good. Yeah, and we're not going to print, but we are going to define a skill. And that skill is of type skill, which we just defined up here. And so, of course, we're going to have to supply all of these. An ID code, that's going to equal this item that came in. And you access the fields like this. There's the ID code. And then we have, well, I'm going to be copying this here. Just like that. So I wonder if, yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4 total ones, because the ID is not something, of course, we have to add. That's done automatically for us, so we need one more, and there we go. So ID code, name, URL, and description. So ID code, let's go back here, name, this is also name, and then a URL, and description, and blam, description. Super. Now, after we've created our skill, what do we need to do? We need to add it to the session. Yeah. I wonder if session could be called skills. That might be better. But in any case, we know this works. So session committed. And with that, it saves it to the database. Isn't that something else? Let's go ahead and stop there, because it has saved it to the database at this point, and then we can use DB browser for SQLite to look at the data. Let's do that. So yeah, let's run it. What I'm expecting to happen is when I run it, when I do a Python main, that it will create a file here called, where's the name of our file? Here, DB SQLite. So let's do it without further ado. Python main.py. So here we have an error of some kind of line 9. Let's take care of it. Type error function argument code must be code, not string. Alrighty. That's on line 9. Let us see here. So the problem turned out to be a syntax error right here. Forgot the parentheses. Thanks to ChatGPT for the error clarification. And now we can run this Python main, bam. And here we see that indeed the file DB SQLite is created. So that is a database, and that database, this little file, has a table in it called skills. How do we read that? Well, go in your browser to DB browser for SQLite, and this is software that is free, works very well as a database manager for SQLite, and works on Windows. I've installed it on Windows, Ubuntu, and Mac, so good luck. It's just a simple install, whatever computer you are on. I happen to have it here. Let's go and close the Ventana, discard that thing, open it up again, and you see that you have it blank here. What you can do very easily to get the connection to this one file is right-click, copy path, and then here open database, and then simply paste that, and it will just open up that file, and there we have it. A table, a database with one table called skills. Right-click, browse that table, and these are all of the items that were in the JSON file. So how many skills do we have? 351 skills. Very nice. And as you see, this is just standard SQL, this little DB browser for SQLite. Very nice. You can click on the columns to sort, descending, ascending. You can search for like Java, and you get Java and JavaScript. Or if you need to enter SQL commands, then here select star from skills, and then here execute, and there you have basically the same thing, where name, how do you do this? Like, how I forgot how to do this. Is it in parentheses like this? Yes, or like this, I guess. Java, like that, I think, right? Yes. So you can enter any kind of SQL there. Very nice. Yeah, there you have it. We're creating our SQLite database. So maybe one thing I want to also show here, since yeah, this is actually quite useful. Not just a way to learn Python, things like that. You could very well want to get data from API and save it in a SQLite file. SQLAlchemy, as far as I know, does other databases as well. So if you need to get it into a MySQL database, you would just need to customize this code. Now, what I want to do here, though, is show how to display it, and that will be like this. 1 second, please. Yeah, so display data. We have so this is basically code. Let's say you have an SQLite database and you want to just display the data. You would need the boilerplate up here, and then skills equals, you would need to do your session, thank you very much, your session query skill all. There we have it. That gets all your skills. And for skill in skills, print, get your format, thank you very much. Record, and then ID, skill, name. So these are just the objects, and yeah, in typical Python simplicity, there you have it. So let's run it again. It will download it again. It will create the database again. I did close my DB browser. That is always a good idea, because you have conflicts when your code is trying to save into the SQLite file and it's open. So just a little tip there. Let's run it. Python main, and what we hope to see, what we expect to see, is the 300 plus records be displayed with ID and name. Here we go. And there they all are. The ID, interesting, it added the 300 something to the other 300 something, actually 351, to get 702. So it added it, but I think this is useful code for learning Python, SQLite, and, well, you know, getting data from the internet and saving it into an SQL format. That's all for now.